get us to
Yeah. I'll find a way to what?
for the help that he was able to give you and like his experience in like the medical side of the law.
Oh yeah, let's go into that.
If I he was gonna finish up a thought, I'd love to hear what
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll just finish up. I'll tie my thought up in a tiny bow, and we'll go into what we did for Brendan. So one, and I think this is really useful to all the MDs that may, or medical professionals that may listen to this. A lot of people don't realize how complicated hiring an attorney can be, and all the different payment structures that are out there. And so really, it boils down to three. And what you just described there, Brendan, is a contingency fee agreement. A contingency fee is what happens when a lawyer is going to represent you in exchange for a percentage of the claim that you're entitled to. So this happens a lot in like personal injury. So personal injury is when someone is injured and an insurance company is on the hook for that injury, usually in automobiles. And so attorneys often feel comfortable with doing a contingency fee agreement when the defendant, when the person being sued is an insurance company, somebody with deep pockets that is legally obligated to pay. So in that scenario, they basically invest money into the case, hiring experts or whatever, because they know they're going to get an outsized return. So the other fee agreement is an hourly fee agreement. And we do this a lot in the business law side of things. This happens when there's not necessarily somebody being sued, you're being retained, meaning hired, to render a service that may or may not have an end date. So one of the things that we offer is outside general counsel. So this is advice that we give to all kinds of business owners. And what we do in that scenario is that we put a certain amount of money in escrow, so in an account that's not our operating account. And then we bill our hourly against that escrow account. We send an invoice, say once a week. And at the time that we invoice, we transfer from that escrow account to our account. And then that escrow account gets replenished in what's called an evergreen retainer agreement until you, as the client, decide that you want to terminate the relationship. Lastly, the last payment structure is just a flat fee where you say, this is going to take this much work, pay me this amount, and we'll complete that. So with that,
Wow.
absolutely, yeah. Let's talk about what I did to help.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't get to like the specifics of it all, but Brendan mentioned how you were able to help him out, and we were talking about it, me and Brendan, how there's so much in this field now, especially with social media in regards to what is and what isn't HIPAA, compliance, and what is what's acceptable online, because of what we see doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay. And how to navigate this field is something that so many of us have to learn, because now everyone's trying to get their office, their practice out on social media, but how do you do that in a proper way? So just your take on this whole field.
Actually,
Sure.
just real quick, just to also Jesus to kind of leave you in on the conversation I had. We're going back 2 weeks now at least with the compliance director when I had like the meeting with her to kind of go over the policies and whatnot, and she wanted me to take down 4 posts, which I did and everything. So like I'm done with all the assignments too. I have until like the 15th of next month, but I
Nice.
just knocked them
Congrats.
out. But well, well, I still don't feel very comfortable right now posting anything, so I'm like kind of holding back. But essentially, it's like there's HIPAA, right, where it's PHI and PII, personal, protected health information, PII. There's actually PCI now, where they go into literally IP addresses need to be protected or not. But essentially, under HIPAA, the PHI and PII, I wasn't necessarily going like against the rules there, but it's the institution specific rules, which is literally no patient information at all. And because I was saying patient had this and this, they can't, no one's going to link that back to someone unless they're literally a doctor I work with. So it's not going to happen. But just because it's one of their rules and it happens to be the only thing interesting that people find on social media that I did, but so that's what it was. So she wanted me to take down 4 posts that were kind of like, well, you could kind of, figure out who it was. So that's where we left off. And she was like, just run stuff by her if I want to post it in the future. And she said you could kind of do what you were doing just without talking about patients, just kind of saying, I took out 7 wisdom teeth today, placed 2 implants, et cetera, et cetera. But then the problem is what I'm thinking is the person or faculty member who filed that complaint is going to look at it like you're just doing the same thing. So now that's where I get uncomfortable. But that's where I'm at right now. So you guys both know.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That seems like a very complex situation to be in. And let me see if I can add any of relief to that. I'll start by saying that nothing that I say here is meant to be construed as legal advice, and it's for informational purposes only. And I'm not a HIPAA or medical law specialist or expert. I do immigration and business law. However, I did take healthcare law in law school, and I did glance over HIPAA. And funnily enough, ERISA, which regulates pensions, is mentioned a lot more in that class. But specific to your situation, there's a huge asymmetry in the leverage that any one provider has in relation to the institution that they work for. And so a lot of the social media that you see out there with medical practices and providers are people who are doing their own thing. And the fact of the matter is that the federal government and the agencies tasked with enforcing HIPAA and other such statutes and laws, let's say this, they are not as heavy-handed on small practitioners who don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they just don't have the bandwidth to enforce little infractions across the board. And so the cost benefit analysis for a provider who has their own practice is totally there. Now, you can certainly do some smart things, which it sounds like you've done already, which is inform yourself, hire a law firm to make sure that you're not, getting into any gray areas that are leaning towards dark. But when you work for the man, you got to do what the man says, or you're going to be SOL, because you don't have much leverage. Now, if you're the LeBron James of orthopedic surgeons and you're bringing in some significant percentage of the hospital's revenue, then maybe you can swing your social media around a little more. But short of that, you got to do what the policies say.
Yep.
Yeah.
To the T.
Yeah.
So.
But in the future, as you look to having your own practice, and once you're already a professional, then you can gain a lot of those freedoms. And I'm not super familiar with the case law on this, but you're talking about institutions who are private. So the sort of the constitutional law analysis here, let's argue that your social media posts were your sort of protected First Amendment speech. Okay. Given that you work for a private institution, it doesn't even factor into the analysis. They can do whatever they want. Now, if you worked for a government institution and they were restricting that speech, then maybe you could have a con law argument there, and they would need to, they would need to have a really good reason and so on and so forth. And I am talking out of school here, so hence the disclaimer at the beginning. But I'm just kind of thinking out loud. There's just not very much you can do, And so I think that the best thing to do is to get in contact with the person in your institution that's enforcing said policies and run everything by them, become their best friend, become like their teacher's pet, and, bring them donuts and coffee and whatever else they like. And you know what I mean? And don't antagonize them, and make sure that you have their blessings.
Right. That's exactly what I'm going to run everything by her that's close to residency. If I even decide to do anything residency related, I mean, it's uncomfortable. Like all the good content was said in a certain way, and so I don't know. I'm going to be running stuff by you too, Jesus. I'm still kind of letting everything kind of clear out, let the smoke clear a bit.
I think that's wise.
Yeah, I'm gonna be waiting a little while. Intuition's something you got to rely on once in a while, and it's telling me let's just wait. Let's just wait a little bit here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is it La Rosa law that I something I noticed before. You said that you hooked up with an old friend who was in immigration law.
Mhm.
And are you guys partners now? Is that under one roof, or is it kind of you guys run things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've since bought him out. He decided he wanted to go into recruiting, and he's making a killing. So good for him. What he does now is he doesn't practice law. Instead, he does legal recruiting. So he just basically does headhunting for a firm that finds talent for other law firms. And he makes like a percentage of salary, and it's insane. And hats off to him.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great. Did he find
yeah.
Cindy? Was it Cindy her name?
Yeah, yeah. Cindy is my baby lawyer.
Did he help find Cindy, or was that?
No, no, I've brought on Cindy way after that. So I bought him out fairly early on. I think it was like year 1.5 or so. It became clear that the opportunity cost for him, because he did start, he was working the firm that he was at, and then he was doing 1 day a week with me, and that was working well. And then eventually he decided he didn't want to work at that firm anymore, and he got the job at the recruiting firm. And I don't believe he ever told the recruiting firm that he was a partner at a law firm. And so he eventually, when the bonuses started to hit, he was like, hey man, I can't, he was like, I can't justify spending 3 or 4 hours on this assignment and not looking for positions for my job listings. So I was like, hey man, that makes total sense. You're making a killing, so your half is worth this much, and here's a check, and we went our separate ways. And then I quickly learned immigration.
Yeah, so can we just get it? Because immigration law is now or immigration itself is such a hot button issue, and I feel like it's something that so many people think they know because of whatever buzzwords are out there. But some of the more specific points of it. So as an immigration lawyer, what's your process? What's your role in it? How do you help those that are looking for to come to the US?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. So by way of background, I mean, I've alluded to this already, but so I was born in Cuba in 92. My family and I moved to Venezuela in 96, and we lived there until Chavez won in 99, who was this sort of dictator figure that, I mean, I think everyone agreed. Well, let's say not everyone. Most of the world agrees ran the country into the ground. Most Venezuelans definitely agree that live in Miami. So we left in '99 as soon as he as soon as he won, and then came to the United States in '99 and settled in Miami. And then everything was, we worked really hard. Mom revalidated anyway. Was able to go to law school, and was grateful for a lot of things. One of them, which is a law passed in 1966 that allowed us to adjust status. So we literally crossed the border between Brownsville and Matamoros in Mexico. And because we were Cuban, and there's a law called the Cuban Adjustment Act of 66. And because back then it was before 9/11, and they were very nice at the border, and they gave us what's called parole. Okay. So when you enter illegally, that's not good. And you can't adjust status a year in under the Cuban Adjustment Act. But if they give you parole, it kind of cleans your entry. And then if you're Cuban, a year and 1 day after entering, if you were paroled, you can apply for a green card. And that's what we did, and that's why now I'm a citizen and everything like that. Now, going back to your question, yeah, so my role is literally to adjudicate, or like not adjudicate, but try to win immigration benefits for my clients. So my clients call me and they go, hey, these are my facts. I entered on this day. This is what they gave me, or I have like a notice to appear. And I hear them out. I hear their case, their situation, where they're from. It's very case by case. And the statute that regulates this is called the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA. It's actually, I'm going to grab it for you. Give me a moment.
I hope I'm right. Imagine like a textbook, like just like a there it is.
It is. It is.
All right, so this is the statute. It's insane.
That's
And
one
very
statute.
well. There's a couple things in here. There's a couple resources in here, but the INA itself is this, and then these over here are regulations. So it's insane. Now there's very few parts of that you use over and over again, and you start to pattern recognize. So with my original partner in the law firm being more immigration minded, I started to do consults with him, and so you start to, despite how big the statute is itself, you start to have fact patterns in your general location. In mine, it's Miami, so I'm dealing with a lot of Venezuelans, a lot of Cubans, and so a lot of those situations start to look alike with minor differences. And so the intervention, what you do for them in the service that you provide is also very similar.
Sorry, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to cut you off. Sorry, and apologies again for advance for the ignorant
No
question, but
worries.
the process is slightly different depending on where these individuals are coming from. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Okay.
wildly different, wildly different. So if you're Cuban, and literally Congress in 1966 passed a law called the Cuban Adjustment Act, saying, and if you look at the congressional record of how this happened, there's not a similar law for any other nationality. You look at how it happened in the 60s when the revolution started in Cuba. A lot of the people who had their property taken and nationalized were well-to-do folks. Okay, they they looked like a lot of the people in Congress. They and you can see like literally some of the proceedings say these people are of good stock. And a lot of them, the mafia was down there in Cuba when the revolution took over. So a lot of them had political connections and stuff like that. And so a law was passed to the great benefit of Cubans that has not been that has not changed for a long while. And there's actually a book on this, on sort of the exceptionalism of that. Obviously, I'm a beneficiary of it myself, so I'm a little bit biased. I can't say that my perspective isn't biased, but if you're like an El Salvadorian, a Guatemalan, someone from Panama, and you cross the border illegally, a Mexican, there is not a great deal that you can do other than an asylum to try to help that. So like I said, the statute is complex, and there's everyone's situation is a little bit different. But generally speaking, immigration breaks down into two categories: employment-based and family-based. And so in family, you're talking about like family reunification and that kind of thing. And here, specifically family petitions, where you have like a USC, United States citizen spouse, or legal permanent resident, LPR, and they petition for their family member. They could be abroad or they could be here, depending on, again, a lot of the particulars of the case. And so you can cure unlawful presence, illegal entry, with a lot of the mechanisms that the USCIS, which is the agency that grants these immigration benefits, has. So what the federal government has tried to do is they created this behemoth agency called USCIS again. I think it's the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, the service or the agency. And what you do is you can fill out these forms that they standardized, a lot like tax forms, and they have really clear instructions online. But it's so intricate that a lot of people have difficulty successfully filling them out. And they can sometimes do more harm than good, because they'll fill out a form that on their facts isn't good for them to fill out, and then they'll tell the federal government, here I am, and then it gets denied, and all of a sudden they're in removal proceedings or deportation proceedings. And so you really, I think, in the realm of immigration, in the realm of immigration, hiring an attorney that knows what they're doing is incredibly, incredibly important, and it's like worth everything. Because you can get yourself in trouble But if you do everything right, you can have a really positive outcome. And so like 80% of my practice, of my immigration practice, is like filling out the right forms for people in the right way, in the right order, so that they get the appropriate benefit. Very seldomly, currently, as my practice sits, do I go into court for removal defense or anything like that. It's I think a factor of the fact that I'm a little bit young, and so I've been a little bit gun shy about taking on some of the more, let's say, ICU type cases where it's like, oh man. So yeah, if you have a specific question or fact pattern, I can apply, but I'm hesitant to just kind of use random hypotheticals.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I was just curious because I'm telling you, like, you hear it all over the place, and I was just, now we have an expert with us. I was very curious as to what the process is, and it seems like like you mentioned, the paperwork and doing it properly is essential, and
Absolutely.
having the right help is huge. And I think that's great for a lot of people to know and to hear that, they think that sometimes trying to go around it, or even like Brendan said, being maybe a little too honest, might not necessarily be the right way to go when they're just trying to, get a better life. So it's a
Well,
sticky
listen,
situation, and just glad there's people like you to help them.
yeah, so thank you. The federal government makes it look like it's easy, right? So a lot of the questions that I get in my consults is like, can I just do it myself? And the question, and like the answer is often yes, you can. Like it's not impossible. Just like you can walk from Miami to New York. You don't need a car. You can get you might get there. You might not take a wrong turn, right? And it's like, a
Up to
lot of people
Albuquerque, New
call.
Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people call, and I get it. Some people just like want like this tidbit of advice or this free information or whatever. And it's like you can do a lot of harm if, for example, if you file for adjustment of status, if you file a form I-485, which is basically a green card application, and prior to that application, the federal government did not know you existed, and then you apply and it gets denied, you go straight into removal proceedings.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So yeah, but and then you have to like figure it out, and it's not you went from a situation where if you were smart and you did the right waiver, so there's a bunch of waivers that exist. Let's say you entered illegally a long time ago, and now you've married a United States citizen. And okay, cool, congrats, amazing, you have a family, you've married a United States citizen, you have a road to fix your situation. But there's appropriate steps. So first you need to file that family petition, that I-130, and you've got to make sure that gets approved. Then you need to file a waiver for having entered illegally, which is an I-601A. And you have to plead sufficiently so that it gets accepted. And once that gets accepted, then you can go ahead and file for the adjustment of status. So if you skip a step, you can find yourself totally screwed. And this is a person who otherwise would have their illegal entry and unlawful presence cured, and they can move forward with having a family in the United States.
What's like and this is going to be such a general question for such a topic that's so specific, especially to individuals. Like you mentioned, they got to fill out all these forms, they got to wait to hear back, get approval, all these things, these hearings. I just imagine the bureaucracy of our government takes forever. So what's like the time period? Because I can imagine the stress, for these people trying to, get their life kind of started and settle down and, kind of clear their minds of what's going on. But now you got to wait for, you know, John Q. Public and the government to give you an approval. It probably takes forever. What's like an average time frame for this kind of stuff?
It does. So there's different offices around the nation. And so you can look up, depending on the form that you filled out, you can go on the website, USCIS, and you can look up the average time. And usually, depending on the form, right now you're looking at between a year to 15 months, 18 months sometimes, depending on the office and the form. They seem to be, with the new administration, there seems to be an increase in budget, and so it feels to me like new applications have been given priority, older applications that have been around for a long time, I think the newer folks are like, that's not my problem. And if you applied a while ago, then you're kind of stuck in limbo and you have to try to get them to pay attention to you. One sort of trick in the book is sort of an ace that you have when you're an attorney is you can sue the federal government for not basically for not doing their job. It's a very arcane legal doctrine. I'm not even going to bring the name because it's in Latin, but but basically you tell the government you're not doing your job, right? But one of the prerequisites to do that is that the form that your particular case be above the reasonable time on the website, and that moves all the time. So if things are getting slow, then they might shift it up, making essentially your legal requirement to sue kind of a moving goal. And so yeah, and so you can't I shy away from doing that, and I haven't had to in a case yet, but I know that it's something that some practitioners do when it becomes absolutely unreasonable.
I'll be honest with you, man. We don't envy Brendan for dealing with blood and needles and knives. I'll be honest, I don't envy you for dealing with all these forms, and that sounds like a lot of complex stuff.
It's
Yeah, well,
very complex.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, I hear you. I think I really enjoy what I do. I'm glad that I figure it out. Luckily for me, it's lucrative. So you build a good team, and this is where I mentioned earlier on about delegating the production line. So my paralegal, who's awesome, her name is Aggie, and she's been doing this since '94. Yeah. So a lot of these forms, she was around when they came out. So she's an absolute badass. And
That
so a lot of
helps.
what I do is that I do the consults with her. We get the client signed up, and I come in for the sort of the creative writing components, for sort of, using as a sounding board and that kind of thing. But she focuses on getting a lot of those forms filled and shipped out.
Gotcha. That is huge. Did Aggie come on board recently, or was that part of like the acquiring?
Yeah, so she came on board, I think at the end of 2022. I think I brought her on board at like November, maybe October of 22. And I've seen this phenomenon where especially in the hiring process, I think a lot of big firms and a lot of corporate America is moving back into the office, but a lot of talent doesn't necessarily want to go back into the office. So if you have a remote job, you can pay a lot less and get really qualified individuals. So for that position, we had about 180 applicants apply. 180 applicants. And so the way that we did our screening process is we basically, screen, preliminary aptitude, and then we did a phone call. And then we had so many applicants, we did a written component. So I had them like read a prompt. Actually, it's a really cool prompt. Anybody hiring, you should go look up A Message to Garcia. It's a short passage, and it describes a really good employee. And so I have them read that, and I had them answer questions regarding what they thought the passage meant. And really what it means is just a person who's a go-getter, who you're going to be able to give a problem to, and they're going to have a solution. And then we had a couple questions that were substantive questions about fact patterns, like, client comes in with this, what's the solution? And out of the applicants that I gave that to, only 6 responses were good. And then
so that really filtered them down.
Yes, 6 out of 180. Woo.
Yeah. Well, out of the 180, I would say like something like 80 applicants were like pre-qualified. Out of those, we called like 40, and then we gave, I think the written exam we gave like 22 people, and out of the 22 people that we gave the written exam to, I think something like 8 responded or something like that, and then 4 or 6 were really, really good. And then I did a final interview based on that. And that's how I found Cindy and Aggie.
That's a long process too. We have less than 10 minutes left right now, boys. I just one more quick question as far, because remember we're working remote now in immigration law, but you're dealing mostly with clients in Miami. Is that correct?
So I have ads here in New York and in Miami. And so the federal courthouse is like 10 minutes away on bike, which is where the immigration claims are adjudicated. In Miami, if I ever have a case down there, I do fly, but I do 99.9% of my process remote. So people find me online, they call in, they want to speak to me, they pay the consult fee. I call them. 80% of those are through the phone. Maybe 15% want to see me via video. That's cool. I have an added fee if they want to see me in person. It's double the cost. We can do that. I just rent out the conference room over at my Regis location and meet them in person. We do the consult. If they want to hire me, they hire me. We do that via DocuSign usually. So I just DocuSign them the contract. They pay through a link. They email me the PDFs, or we provide a client access file that's in our cloud, our secure cloud. And then it's all knowledge work. So it's like, you fill the forms for them. We use a client management tool called DocketWise. And what it does is that it has the immigration forms already on the program. And so you plug in a lot of the data from the client. You can even invite the client to help you answer some of the questions, and it spits out a lot of the things. And then so then it's sort of a collaborative effort between Aggie and the client. And then I kind of give it a final review, and then she ships it out.
I think that's similar to the accountant we have for the company. And then but then how do you get you? So you said you have an ad online. That's how you get a lot of your clients. Okay, is it? If I can ask, is that Google PPCs, or is it LinkedIn? Is it?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, I'm totally open with this stuff. So you kind of have to use a shotgun approach, right? Like everything feeds itself, right? There are things that are going to be your bread and butter, right? That are going to generate a lot of leads. And there are things that you got to have just to look a certain way, right? You can't have a crappy website. You can't have crappy SEO, right? Is it gonna generate all of your leads? Probably not. But if you don't have it put together, then it's gonna turn the leads that you do create away. So I use a marketing firm for my website and SEO and Google My Business Management. And I'll plug them in. They're called the DM Duo. They're phenomenal. They're personal friends of mine from undergrad that study marketing, and they do a phenomenal job for very little. They also do the marketing for my mom, and the practice there. Then the bread and butter for me is a big name directory, and for me, sort of mom's version of or my version of ZocDoc. So in the doctor space, ZocDoc is a company that's a 2-ton behemoth that's paying Google literally millions of dollars a year to make sure that they're at the top. So what you want to do as a provider is you want to be at the top of that directory, and whatever that takes. And for me, it's FindLaw and Abogado.com. They're by Thomson Reuters. And so that's how I've been able to sort of leap above some of the players that have been doing it organically for a long time. I have directory listings on there that are not cheap, but they yield results. And so and then also sort of my market advantage, or let's say core competency, the market I serve it's not corporate America, right? Even in the business law side, my clients are predominantly Spanish speaking. Also, I would say about 80-20, and they're Latin American entrepreneurs who have brought their business abroad and brought it to the United States, and they're either thinking about doing so and they want advice ahead of time, or they're in some sort of a dispute with another company or some of their own members even, or shareholders. And on the business side, those are predominantly my clients. And then on the immigration side, I do mostly family based. Some of the bigger firms that work in corporate America do mostly employment based, which is when big companies bring on people from abroad. Think H-1B, think labor certifications and things like that. I do those as well, investor visas. Aggie's really good at doing those because she's done them for a long time. But I'd be lying if I said that they were the majority of my cases. It's about an 80-20 split, family to employment based.
Oh man, incredible. There's so many. All I know of is super lawyers, and there's another one slipping my mind, but
that's amazing. That's good to know, because so to get super lawyers, you literally have to pay for it. You have to get nominated by a peer, but it's done by Thomson Reuters as well. So it's kind of like the same company. So now that you say that, I'm gonna have a buddy of mine nominate me and pay for it, because it seems like it would be effective.
maybe. I mean, oh man, the marketing side is fascinating. Like you said, they're paying millions on Google to be at the top, and then you have to pay them a fee to be at the top of their platform. It's stuff is fascinating. Sean, I think we're learning a lot, because we're kind of considering doing, like, we're building one of our websites now, which is going to be a service, and we're running short on capital. So now we have to bring on some capital. We're thinking of using our marketing experience for dentists and such, to maybe consult on the side, try and figure out how we're going to bring people value and see about charging them. But we're literally starting from scratch. I mean, we have like 5 or 6 years of experience marketing through Instagram and whatnot, but we'll see where it goes from that. And I will be hitting you up with any questions that, because we're going to have a lot.
Yeah, I would say any time in the medical space that you're selling leads to providers, you got to be careful with Stark, and you got to be careful with patient brokering statutes. I don't know how ZocDoc gets around it, but you can get into trouble when a provider is paying you a per patient fee. And again, I'm speaking out of school here, but it's certainly something we can look into.
Yeah. We were thinking of doing like a monthly subscription based thing, and then
That
all
helps.
the leads come in for free.
Yeah.
They'd have to pay per. We're ways off from that, though. We're starting on like the smaller version of a template with pre-dental students in dental school, and we could go over that too another time if you want. But we got 1 minute and 55 seconds left. I have a feeling we have a lot of conversations in the future here. I feel like we could go so many avenues right now, which is awesome.
I mean, we covered such a broad spectrum of stuff and in such great detail, but learned a lot today.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on, guys. I'm happy to do it again. It's your show, so whatever you find interesting, just let me know, and I'll be happy to oblige.
Thank you. Yeah. We could even get more focused, like one topic base for future convos. If we get to that point, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
But thank you for coming on tonight.
Yeah, much appreciated, Jesus. Appreciate all the help, advice, the education.
Again, guys, thanks so much for having me, and I learned a ton from you guys as well. So I look forward to picking both your brains as well. Maybe in the future I could be allowed to ask some questions. I know I definitely have some.
Let's do it. Yeah. All right, man. I'll see you in the building.
All right, you guys.
Elevator.
All right.
Nice to meet you. Take care, man.
Same.
All right.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.